So the next topic that I wanted to discuss with you guys is institutional racism and the repercussions of that. So I know there has been attempts, a lot of them within the black community, to define racism as not being a person-to-person issue, but in terms of systematically from the top down, in terms of those who make the law, the types of laws that we have, who those laws cater to, and the application of those laws leaning to the disadvantage of minority groups. So what that means in a practical sense is when a white person tells you go back to Africa as you walk past them on the street, that's just a person that's prejudiced. So on the old model, it would be deemed as racism, but we're not talking about institutional racism. That person isn't in and of himself able to prevent your progress in life or extensively inhibit you moving forward in any way. Just doesn't like type of people apparently. However, it can have a more insidious nature. So if we're talking about an institution such as the police force, which has been open to debate recently, if the police force are stacked against you, meaning your likelihood of being stopped is a greater risk, if your likelihood of being searched is at a greater risk, if your likelihood of being falsely arrested and falsely accused is at a greater risk, if your likelihood of dying in police custody is at greater risk, then that can seriously inhibit your progress as a person through life and also impact on your family. I made a list of things just to kind of knock off one by one. Just in terms of institutional racism. So finances. So things like getting a loan for a house or a business loan, if the person in a position of power is racially biased against you in that institution, then they can prevent you from progressing financially. In the education system, a lot of studies have now been done to show that if a person is named and the test isn't anonymous, or the teacher knows who the person is who did the test and knows their race, then they're likely to get a lower mark than if the test was marked anonymously. And there can be other things in terms of the expulsion rates and such. So pupils who do the same type of misdemeanors on one race are more likely to be kicked out of school than those from another race. So educationally, self-esteem. So this is kind of where the Black Lives Matter thing crosses over as well. So in terms of self-esteem, what is a young black person's depiction of themselves? Do they value themselves? Why not? And should they value themselves? If the society is constantly portraying you to be almost demonic or portraying you to be violent, and this can cross over quite easily from self-esteem to self-hate. When I was saying earlier, like I genuinely believe that I was predisposed to adultery, to cheating. I thought it was something that was expected of me. I thought it was something that wouldn't be that shocking. I know in my interactions with parents and as in other people's parents and relationships, it was always a thing. Sometimes I feel like I deserve an OBE for race relations in the community. The amount of racist parents I've met. And so like you're depicted as, he's gonna cheat on you. He's gonna leave you. You know, he's gonna abuse you or beat you in these things. And that's the depiction you're told that you are. And then if you're told that you are, like, so here's an example of it being a disadvantage and an advantage. I know if I walk past a group of white boys, they may be less likely to attack me, especially if I did something like that. They genuinely believe I have a knife on me because I'm depicted as being violent. So I can work my way out of a situation a lot easier. Like if I can play off, stay there 1 second, and they'll genuinely believe I'm about to phone someone. So yeah, like I'm trying to remember my password.
Got right up.
Yeah, I can genuinely depict that. And then I know from music and being around musicians, there's a lot of people claiming lifestyles. Like I know them from school. They're in the top class the whole time, or they didn't even have detentions and things like that. But you'll believe them about how gangster they are simply from the colour of their skin. And they can exploit that and live a nice lifestyle. Like most successful artists and rappers and such, they live in suburbia now. No one wants to stay in deprived communities. But the depiction of them is such. And then also the effects on mental health. So we talked about white gaze and such earlier. But if you're constantly battling all the things we just mentioned and the things we mentioned earlier, what is the state of that person's mental health? Like, if we take certain stereotypes and apply them, so you step on a black person's trainers and they're primed to react. exaggeration, but there may be an element of truth in it. But what is going on in that person's life and mind that means at this point they can be triggered by something as simple as you stepping on their toes as the last straw? They can't take it anymore, and now they're willing to kill you and take out the anger on you for what's happened. So I think I just said that in order to raise the awareness of what is happening within the black community. So I don't think anyone's advocating for it's time to draw on statues or things like that. But what we are seeing, especially from like young people, because we're talking about like 15s and 16s, a lot of the people I'm seeing out there is, I'm angry, I have suffered, my parents have suffered, they suffered before them, they tried to do it peacefully, I don't know what to do, help. I think is the thing, and I don't know where the help's coming from. I don't know the solution. I think a lot of people don't, but there are a lot of factors at play. So the debate becomes how could one possibly start addressing these things? Anybody?
Well, you've drawn up several examples, and I mean there's a number of others even that could be raised. Just you mentioned about mental health and the disparity between, for example, the length of time. If you have someone with a severe mental illness or something, the way they are treated in the system is different. The duration of time that they are kept will be longer than if it were a white person. I mean, there's a number of things like that are out there. There's statistics that are and I know people can be skeptical about statistics and the way they can be manipulated and all of that, but these are realities. These are existential realities. Physical health is another one. There's this idea that black people have a higher pain tolerance just because they're black, not just because some people have a higher pain tolerance, but black people have a higher pain tolerance. But coupled with that, they are less reliable when it comes to self-diagnosis. And so you have black people going to A&E with severe issues, and they're not taken seriously, and they are more susceptible to a range of situations within the hospital whereby they're neglected and perhaps even die, so that there's actually reluctance by some in the black community to go to a hospital because they're not sure that they'll get adequate care or they'll be taken care of seriously. And that's even with hospitals that are now largely, in our context at least, largely staffed by people from other countries, and so it's just like there's a very messy situation. What you've done is you've listed a number of problems and you've mentioned a solution. The stock answer a lot of people are giving now is they'd hear you say that and they'd say, oh, this guy, he calls himself a Christian, but he just said he doesn't know what the solution is. And I'm like, the gospel is the solution. You know what I'm saying? You know, and it's like, just preach the gospel. Well, I'm sorry. They have simplified things to the point of absurdity. Was it the gospel, just the preaching of the gospel and lots of people getting saved, that freed the slaves? No. People got saved and then devoted themselves to systemic change, to pursuing the abolition first of the slave trade, because they were realistic. They couldn't do it like that, although it would have been nice if they could have. They abolished the slave trade. They made various other compromises along the way to try and diminish things. And then slavery. White men and black men who were born free or born slaves but then escaped. All of them concerted, if you go back, especially in the history of this nation, Christian men and women who devoted themselves to systemic changes, institutional changes. And so it's like, did the gospel, simply preaching the gospel, prevent segregation? No, there were plenty of people, including maybe even especially, of Reformed, fundamentalist in the original sense of the word, that we believe in the inerrancy of Scripture and we believe all that, who actually propagated this. I mean, who in the USA were at the forefront of the anti-civil rights movement.
Yeah.
And to this day, you still have people who say, "Oh, just preach the gospel," as though it's some sort of magic, snap your fingers and something changes. Please understand, I believe that Christ is the solution. I do. But we have to do more than proclaim Christ. We have to proactively pursue Christ-likeness. And that requires of Christians, that Christians who are so called pursue roles in the police force, pursue roles in houses of parliament, run for, get involved in the system to submit it to the Lordship of Jesus Christ. I hope that's helpful in some way.
Two passages came to my mind.
Please.
So Romans 1:16, Paul says, "I'm not ashamed of the gospel because it's the power to save."
Yeah.
And he talks about different ethnicities there, the Jews, Gentiles. Great. This is the gospel is the solution. And then in Romans chapter 12, verse 1 and 2, what does Paul say? Okay, to those who receive this power, do not be confirmed, do not be shaped, do not be accursed to mind, don't accept the wrongdoings of a system, but be transformed. In other words, the gospel saves us, but for a reason, so we can be transformed, and we can be part of a transformation in our communities. So I would say yes, the gospel is the answer, but it's not only the message in itself, but the actions that Jesus expects us to take in order to make sure that the gospel impacts our communities, and I mean, and throughout history, I mean, the church has done it. I mean, finance, education, I mean, through pastoral care, even helping people with mental health. So I would say yes, it's the gospel plus works. Okay, so we need to work out our salvation not only for ourselves, but for the sake of the community as well.
God's worked it in. You work it out.
That's right. Yeah. So we don't expect Jesus to just save us and do the work here as well. I mean, we are the lights as well. We are the lights as well. Yeah.
I feel as well, even within the solution. So traditionally, and this is a stain in a certain way, but traditionally it has been through non-Christian means often that have created at least somewhat improvements for certain people. Like freed slaves are indebted to Nat Turner. Until slavery stopped being profitable and safe, it would continue, and I don't think it would have ended. It wasn't as if the moral compass of society shifted. It was so many whites started dying as slave owners that the risk was no longer worth the reward. And because of this, but I don't even think blacks are credited with freeing themselves from slavery. That's valid. It's pitched that at some point, like a William Wilberforce or somebody stood up in Parliament and said, "Guys, let's have an idea. Let's end slavery." Like
back to white self-perception. It's like we're the saviors.
Yeah, like
we freed the slaves.
This is the thing, because and then again, so this leads to the kind of lack of education where when somebody messaged me the other day, were there any wars who opposed slavery? I was like, yeah, all along that coast of Africa, all along the west coast of Africa, there was constantly rebellions against slavery. But again, because I think European ideology has quite a nation state built into it, if a country doesn't declare war, it's not war. So we're talking about tribal, so developed families over hundreds of years where you'll attack a family that's long close, or a small group of nomadic people. We're not talking about a nation. It's not a king that's like, hey guys, we're at war now, stop taking people, So I think even the crediting of having freed themselves from slavery isn't credited to Orlando Equianos and these types
Toba
of
Cuguano, Ignatius Sancho, these in the U.S., there's an innumerable number. You had more black soldiers in the Union Army and in the American Civil War by the end of it than there were total soldiers in the Confederate Army.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
there was a hard fight, and yeah.
Yeah, and I don't feel that's black history. I feel that's human history.
Right.
The Civil War and the slave trade and these things. Because I mean, blacks weren't the perpetrators or the protagonists in that narrative, and the majority of them weren't slaves. So to make it seem like slavery is black history or something like that.
There's a book that I've been working my way through, and the title I think sums it up. I think it's My History is More Than Slavery, yet, and this is the thing. Even when, for example, people talk about Oscars so white and all of those type things, but let's look at when suddenly they get applause or a film gets attention or something like that. 12 Years a Slave, Selma, Green Book. These are films over the past, half decade or a little more that have captured people's attention in some way. Even those films faced opposition and were hard to make and badly received by some quarters, and there's controversy behind them. But notice how they zoom in on black suffering more than black triumph, if that makes sense. And how there are even, certainly in 12 Years a Slave, there were countries that would actually put Brad Pitt's face as the main, like he was a major character and he's a bit part in the whole thing, but he's like, or the Green Book, which again garnered controversy largely because fine enough film, but people looked at that and they felt that it was centering the issue at just if we can just get along as people individually, then that'll change everything. And while I think maybe some of the critiques might have overreached a bit, I think you have a good, decent enough story there that needs to be told. Sort of a reverse Driving Miss Daisy type of thing. And those are necessary. What we're thinking about here is the bigger picture of institutional stuff and just the way it's layered into every, so much that could be said about this.
And whose responsibility is it? Because it feels like black blood needs to continuously be shed in order to move society forward in terms of how we relate as human beings and how consistently. I mean, so as powerful as Selma was, and again, once it's over and done, it doesn't even seem again like, like the blacks are credited. Well, whites, we're allowed to vote now and stuff, so stop going on about it, and this kind of thing. It's not, but the ramifications of it. I mean, for someone to say slavery happened ages ago, what's the significance of it today? Like every time I hear my name, Walker, that's a reminder of slavery. Like I'm reminded that I was owned by somebody somewhere called Walker. So like for me in my life, it's not as if it's a far removed concept or anything like that, So it's a constant ramification. And then I'd say this idea that it's done and we should start afresh. If we're playing a football game and another team admits guilt, slavery was wrong, and the score is 44-0, and they're like, okay, we're gonna stop cheating now, let's play. The score's 44-0. And like, what's wrong with you? You're losing. You're doing so bad at this. It's like 48-2 now. And like, how do you go about bridging that gap in terms of saying, When the facts come out, like we've been paying back for the slave debt to slave owners up to 2015, when things like reparations are raised and people are like, oh, why should I have to pay for my ancestors did, but you want Germany to pay Israel 3% of their GDP every year, and you're happy with that under British law for Germany.
We didn't have a problem paying off the national debt for freeing the slaves, like you just mentioned. You know, we've been paying through our taxes up till 2015, but we weren't paying the descendants of slavery.
At least give a rebate.
We were paying. We were paying off the debt of the money that was paid to slave owners, that kept them really prosperous. And you know, this generational wealth and the accumulation of wealth, and so you know, there's obscene riches that have passed down, and only more has been accumulated. But you had people who were turned loose with nothing, not even the promised plot of land and the donkey that they were supposed to get.
Yes, it's interesting because I was going to say within that context as well of the repayment. If the repayment up until 2015 is under the context of loss of goods, then that literally means that at least up until the point of 2015, black lives were still counted as goods.
Wow.
Because you know the whole insurance book and everything is a categorization as cargo. You know, where you have stories in history like, you know, oh, it looks like things aren't going to, let's draw some blacks off so we can get the money back on the insurance if we didn't sell them for loss of cargo. So if that's not recent enough, I mean, then take a George Floyd or wherever else. But 2015 feels pretty recent to me.
You know, this thing about self-hate that that you'd mentioned, I think though that's something that's very important, because I increasingly see seems to be young black men who are listening to other black voices that may have some good things to say, but those influencers and those voices build their careers, it seems to me, on saying things that white people want to hear. Stuff about black on black crime, for example. Why is there a category for black on black crime but not white on white crime?
And why am I in that category?
Why, exactly.
Despite being of mixed heritage.
Yeah, exactly. And why when you look at and just even that, if they want to talk about black on black crime, okay, why is it black on black? Because, and they're talking often in an American context, because people commit crimes in the communities in which they live, or in that sort of cultural context. So why are there no white people in that community? And the white on white crime statistics are as, I mean, I've seen people write in the last couple of weeks, it sounds like something from the 1960s, you know, blacks are their own worst enemies. You know, and these are actually by professing Christians. You know, if we're going to, you know, if we're going to talk about Black Lives Matter, you know, they say we have to talk about, you know, do they matter when this, and do they matter? Yes, they do. But you're missing the point that the whole system is founded on the suppression of black people.
And I can make a case for black on black crime. If I'm a criminal and I'm looking to rob somebody of their phone or other relatively cheap-end goods, we're not talking about bonds or stock, then if I rob a black person, I know the thing is going to get taken seriously by the police, if they even have faith to call the police.
There we go.
I'd say, how many times have people attempted to rob me? I'd say maybe about 7 or 8. I think at the beginning of this, I'd called the police with a friend once, and they refused to come. Wow. So it's like, you know, I'm better off, if I'm in that situation, I'm better off calling that guy that I know lives over there where you're from. He lives on that tower block. He knows me. He can potentially get my phone back for me from that guy who took it. What am I calling the police for? For someone to, okay, And if I go into a police station, my fear is I'm going to fit one of the descriptions or something. And I'm going to be coming out.
Let me guess, the description, black man.
Exactly.
Tall.
Like,
Very descriptive.
I'm not
Must
trying
be.
to have that smoke in my life just because I got robbed. Now I have to go to prison. No. Like, whereas I know if
It's
I go and
happened
rob
before.
a white person, like the ramification of that could be disastrous for me. Like, you know, if it's especially if it's a stereotypical victim, like a white female or something like that, that is potentially going to ruin my life quite rapidly. That might even get Daily Mail coverage. Like, it's such a high stake thing. And then the other aspect is, what is the value of a black life?
Wow.
Like, you know, how much problems are really gonna cause? Like, you know, if I kill a black person, there'll be a funeral. It's not going to go much further than that, do you know what I mean? Whereas if I kill a white person, their family has the finances and everything else to make sure that you're going to be brought to justice. Like, there's certain names that I know which is part of culture, like a Reese Jones and things like that. The white boy that got killed up in Liverpool area. Like, I know his name because he was white and he was killed. I don't know the names. I don't know the name of the little black girl that got shot in the back or ran away from something. I remember it happened, but it's not embedded onto my consciousness. I haven't been beaten over the head with it. I know Madeleine McCann went missing.
Yeah.
I don't know the name of like black kids that go missing.
All the time.
Yeah, I mean, you know, so it was just like the value of that person is just different. You want an American context, say Trayvon over some Skittles. Like, you know, what's the value of a black life? You can kill a black person, get away with it.
And the guy who did that was autographing Skittle packets.
Yeah.
Like, that's tasteful.
So I mean, so it's like, we were told the value of a black life is low, so now you want the 15-year-old to redefine everything that society has to offer individually by himself and have a high self-esteem and moral compass of himself.
I have a serious problem with people who deny the reality of institutional racism, or whatever you want to call it. And there are plenty of people, and unfortunately, like I said, I'm increasingly encountering young black men and women who push back on this due to a couple of influencers and whatnot in their life. I think it is, I hope it's a phase. I think it is self-hate. I think it is, they are being told, maybe what they have been told, like you were, predisposition to adultery, or you know, you're going to be more aggressive and more criminal and all. Some of the things that I've heard from young black men and women would be more comfortable coming from a white supremacist.
Yeah.
But if you say that, then it's like, you know, it's like, oh, I'm black, and it's impossible for me to think that way, or it's impossible for me to hate black people, or to have a self-hatred, or to, and actually no. In the same way, you know, that it's...
We're not immune to racism.
No.
Like, I was raised racist because I was raised in British society. And I'm still recovering from that. I still feel on some level that the blacks are out to get me.